Week 15 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to drop this week. The first guy, Tommy Pham of the New York Mets. Tommy Pham, one of the better hitters on this Met team in the month of June. What a little groin injury that's been nagging on and off here for Pham over the last few weeks here. Things have slowed down for him, and he definitely could be a trade candidate as well at the Major League trade deadlines. On the season, 9 home runs, 34 RBIs, 25 runs scored, 10 stolen bases, a 271 average, and a 347 on base. A Pham doing a little bit of everything, showing some pop, where he could finish the season 18-20 home run range, 10 stolen bases under his belt, where he could finish anywhere from 18 to 20 as well in that category. And he's a guy that's always hustled and played hard, is Tommy Pham, I believe. But right now, over the last couple weeks here, the playing time's gone down a little bit with the injury, and he's taken a hit as well as his numbers as Pham in the last 2 weeks, in a 3 for 27 slump, with only a run and a stolen base and a 111 average. So right now, this New York Met team, a few more losses before the trade deadline, or a few games more back in the wild card, he's probably going to be traded, Tommy Pham, who's obviously a rental, and the Mets might as well try to get a prospect that maybe they could develop over the next few seasons. But right now, for fantasy owners, it's been a cold streak for Pham. July 7th at the Padres, 1 for 4 run. July 8th at the Padres, 0 for 3. July 9th at the Padres, 0 for 1. July 14th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. And July 15th versus the Dodgers, he pinched it in that one, drew a walk. And the 16th sat at that ball game. So right now, Tommy Pham hopefully could get healthy and get things going a little bit. But right now, he hasn't produced over the last couple weeks. It was a great month of June for Pham. But right now, while he hasn't done much, and he's not a premium hitter, obviously, and even though he could even lose his job every day with the Mets, or if he gets traded to another team, he's a hitter I would drop this week. The next hitter is TJ Friedl, Cincinnati Reds. So the Cincinnati Red team, it's been a nice season for the most part, and a lot of youngsters coming up, and TJ Friedl's been one of them this year here, playing pretty much the whole year after last season was in the big leagues for 2.5 months. On the season for Friedl, 6 home runs, 32 RBI, 16 stolen bases, 34 runs scored, a 294 average, and a 367 on base. But the last 2 weeks for him as well have been a struggle, and he's actually been dropped in 6% of fantasy leagues. So in the last 2 weeks, no home runs or RBI, 2 stolen bases, 3 runs scored, a 200 average, and a 333 on base here for Friedl. So right now, he's not getting on base like he did. We know stolen bases is his specialty with 16 already on the season, where he's got an outside shot of reaching 30 stolen bases. But right now, a lot of moving parts over here in Cincinnati. And once again, calling up another top prospect in Christian Encarnacion Strand, where they're going to be moving guys around, and some guys are not going to be playing every day. And if Friedl continues doing this, they can move someone else to center field here, because this Red team has abundance of prospects. They got a lot of solid hitters beforehand, before McLean, De La Cruz, and Strand have come up. And now Friedl could be an odd man out as well if one of those guys move to the outfield, or whatever the case may be. July 9th at the Brewers, 0 for 2. July 14th versus the Brewers, 1 for 4. July 15th versus the Brewers, 0 for 4. July 16th versus the Brewers, 0 for 4. So he's slumping right now is TJ Friedl. He's still going to get opportunities, obviously, versus right-handed pitching, I would believe. But like I said, he's been struggling over the last couple weeks. And if he's not getting on base, he's not doing what he does best in stealing bases. I know the average is solid this season at 294, but he wasn't a big-time prospect, this TJ Friedl. And right now, he's just playing pretty decent baseball. But I think the league's caught up to him a little bit, and a lot of breaking ball stuff he's been seeing. So right now, well, he's struggling, is Friedl. He's a hitter I would drop this week. The next hit is Jeremy Pena of the Houston Astros. So Jeremy Pena, what a postseason it was for last season for him, and the MVP in the World Series. But right now, he's banked up as well with a hamstring injury. And the numbers really haven't been good at all for Pena. 10 home runs, 33 RBIs, 43 runs scored, 8 stolen bases, a 241 average, and a 297 on base. So we know Pena is a free swinger, swings early in the count, and his strikeout rate is not horrible, but it's not great as well. 78 Ks in 323 at-bats. But the last month of the season, virtually he's done nothing for fantasy owners. 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 7 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, 217 average, and a 280 on base. And he's definitely a streaky hitter, and he could get hot at any time. But right now, it just hasn't been a good season for him. I know he's got 10 home runs, which isn't a horrible number. I know he could steal some bases, but it just hasn't been there since June here for Jeremy Pena. And if you're down there in the standings, I don't think you could wait much longer for him to produce. So the last few games for Pena: July 7th versus the Mariners, 1-for-4. July 8th versus the Mariners, 1-for-3 a run. July 9th versus the Mariners, 0-for-3. July 14th at the Angels, 0-for-4 with a run and a ribbon. July 15th at the Angels, 1-for-6. I'm mightily struggling right now to Jeremy Pena, but definitely if you drop him off to the wire, I would keep an eye on him because he could get hot. We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it in the World Series. But right now, while he's not producing, I'm banged up with a hamstring injury that obviously could linger for months on end and even for a season for some players. He's a hitter I would drop this week. The next hitter is Garcia of the Kansas City Royals. So Garcia, he got off to a nice start early in the season, but now he pretty much hasn't done much on the year. 3 home runs, 23 RBIs, 26 runs scored, 14 stolen bases, a 275 average, and a 329 on base. And over the last 2 weeks here for Garcia, 1 home run, 3 RBIs, a stolen base, 3 runs scored, a 189 average, and a 279 on base. And right now he's been losing some playing time as well. Here's Garcia. So we know he's a stolen base specialist, is Garcia. But just like Friedl, if he's not getting on base and not stealing bases, he's not going to have much fantasy value. Only 3 home runs on the year. He's more of a leadoff hitter or a ninth hitter, a guy that's just going to get on base for speed. And right now, he really hasn't shown much over the last few weeks here. July 8th at the Guardians, 1-for-5 a rib. July 9th at the Guardians, 1-for-4. July 14th versus Tampa, it was rained out. July 15th in a doubleheader versus Tampa, 0-for-7 with an RBI. July 16th versus Tampa, 1-for-4. And July 17th versus the Tigers in that ball game. They benched him in that one. So Garcia's been struggling the last few weeks. And even with the stolen bases, it's a stat that's not a huge thing anymore, in my opinion, in fantasy baseball. I'd rather have runs, home runs, RBIs, and averaging on base. And right now, Garcia's pretty much only bringing on base percentage and stolen bases, and he hasn't done those things in a few weeks. So right now, I believe he's a hitter I could drop this week. And the 5th and final hitter I look to drop this week here is Jake McCarthy of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And McCarthy, it's been an up and down season for him. Last year, he came up and he took the league by storm, but this season, it's been total opposite. On the year, 2 home runs, 13 RBIs, 28 runs scored, 20 stolen bases, a 246 average, and a 329 on base. So another player where he's only going to be a stolen base specialist is McCarthy. He's not really going to drive in a lot of runs. The batting average, I know last season was 283, but this season's been a struggle. And remember, he was in the minor leagues after the first month of the season, not doing month for about a month and a half, until the Diamondbacks called him up in June back onto the main roster. So right now, McCarthy's struggling. And the last 2 weeks, you've seen it as well. No home runs, 2 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 4 runs scored, a 200 average, and a 385 on base. So the one positive I could take out of it is he's still drawing walks and getting on bases, McCarthy. But everything else, he's pretty much been non-existent here in fantasy baseball. And like I said, he got called down for a reason early in the season. But the Diamondbacks, they'd rather see what they got with him, even though they were in a pennant race, than have another player just throwing out there that most likely doesn't have upside like McCarthy does. But right now, he really hasn't shown it. July 9th versus the Pirates, 0-for-4. July 14th at the Jays, 0-for-4. July 15th at the Blue Jays, 2-for-3 with 2 RBIs. And July 16th at the Blue Jays again, 0-for-1 with a run. So McCarthy, he's been dropped down in the lineup. A few weeks ago, he was batting second in a couple ball games, then 6th. And now they've really dropped him down 7th or 9th usually in the lineup. So right now, well, his production's gone down all the way to the 9th spot. Here's McCarthy, even though it's not always a bad thing, but he's not producing. And if he's not getting on base, he's not bringing stolen bases. And like I said early in the video, stolen bases, I think, are a little bit overrated at this point, because a lot of players are doing it now with the rule change over the last season. So right now, McCarthy not hitting for average, not showing power or driving in runs, and he's a hitter I would drop this week. So that's a few hitters I look to drop in week 15 of the fantasy baseball season.